I was 2 hours late. My shoes were broken, my dress was borrowed, and I almost didn't go. But when I walked into that restaurant, soaked from the snow, ashamed and out of breath, he stood up, he smiled. And he said four words that changed my whole life. If you believe love can still find you even on your worst day, even when you have nothing left to give but your honesty, stay with me till the end of this story. Type I'm here if you're watching, and let's walk through this Christmas Eve together. Subscribe now because what happens tonight in this story will stay with you long after it ends. I want to tell you about the night everything changed, not because I was looking for it. Not because I believed in fairy tales anymore, but because sometimes life gives you a gift wrapped in the ugliest paper and you almost throw it away before you even open it. Before that night, my life was simple, and if I'm honest, it was hard. I lived in a small apartment on the third floor of an old building, the kind where the heater rattled more than it warmed you, and the window let in just enough cold to remind you that winter doesn't care about your bills. I had lost my mother earlier that year. She was the only family I truly had left, and after she passed, the apartment felt bigger and emptier at the same time. I worked two jobs, cleaning offices in the early morning and waiting tables at night, just to keep the lights on and food on the table. Christmas was coming, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the magic of it. I felt the weight of it. My best friend was the one who convinced me to try again, to believe that maybe something good could still happen for me. She sat beside me one evening, my old couch creaking under us, and she pulled out her phone with a mischievous smile. "I signed you up for something," she said. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She had put my profile on a dating app, one of those matchmaking services where people don't show their photos right away, where you get to know someone through words before you ever see their face. I told her I didn't have time for that. I told her my heart wasn't ready, but she reminded me that my mother always said good things come to those who still choose to hope, even in the middle of pain. A few days later, I matched with someone. His profile had no photo, just a short bio that said he valued honesty over appearance and connection over material things. I almost didn't reply, but something about his words felt different, gentle, unhurried. We began talking, just simple messages at first, about our days, about music, about the kind of things people talk about when they're testing the waters. He never asked me what I did for a living in a way that felt like judgment. He never asked where I lived like he was trying to measure my worth. He just asked how I was feeling, what made me laugh, what made me tired. Slowly, without realizing it, I started looking forward to his messages more than anything else in my day. He asked me to meet him on Christmas Eve at a restaurant downtown, one of those elegant places with tall windows and warm golden lights that I had only ever seen from the outside, walking past on my way home from work. I remember standing outside that restaurant once, months before, just staring at the candles on the tables, wondering what it must feel like to sit inside instead of just looking in. When he mentioned that restaurant, my stomach turned with both excitement and fear. I didn't own anything nice enough to wear there. I barely had bus fare to get across town. My neighbor, an older woman who had become like family to me since my mother passed, offered me a dress from her closet, one she said she wore only once, years ago, to her own daughter's wedding. It was a deep red dress, simple but elegant, and when I put it on for a moment, I almost felt beautiful again. She lent me a pair of shoes too, slightly too big, but I didn't complain. I had no other choice. That night the snow started early, softly at first, then heavier, blanketing the streets in white. I left my apartment with just enough time to get there, or so I thought. The bus broke down halfway through my journey, and I stood on the sidewalk in the freezing cold, watching my breath turn to fog in the air, wondering if this was some kind of sign that I wasn't meant to go. I tried calling for another ride, but my phone battery, already weak, died completely just as I dialed. I had no way to tell him I was running late, no way to explain. I stood there for a moment, snow falling on my shoulders, tears threatening to fall for a completely different reason than the cold, and I almost turned around and walked home. But something in me, maybe my mother's voice, maybe just stubborn hope, told me to keep walking. So I did. I walked nearly 40 minutes through falling snow, my borrowed shoes sliding with every step, the hem of my dress soaked by the time I reached the last few blocks. One of the shoes tore completely near the end, and I had to walk the final stretch with my heel exposed to the icy pavement. I remember passing shop windows glowing with Christmas lights, families laughing behind glass, and feeling like an outsider looking into a world I didn't belong to. By the time I reached the restaurant, I was almost 2 hours late, breathless, soaked, embarrassed beyond words. I stood outside the glass doors for a long moment, staring at my own reflection, mascara slightly smudged, hair damp, dress clinging to me from the snow. I told myself he was probably gone already. Why would anyone wait 2 hours for a woman who couldn't even show up on time looking like this? I almost turned to leave, ready to walk back into the cold and never speak to him again out of sheer shame. but something made me push the door open instead. The warmth of the restaurant hit me first, golden light, soft music, the smell of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts in the air. And then I saw him. He was still there, sitting at a table near the window, a candle flickering between two untouched plates, his coat still on as if he too had just been fighting off the cold in his own way. When he saw me, he didn't look confused or annoyed. He stood up immediately, and with the warmest smile I had ever seen on another human being, he said, "You came, that's all that matters to me tonight." Those 4 words undid something in me. I wanted to explain everything, the bus, the snow, the torn shoe, the dead phone, but before I could get a single word out, he pulled out my chair and told me to sit, to breathe, to just be there with him. He ordered warm tea for me first, noticing my shivering hands before we even looked at the menu. He didn't ask why I was late in an accusing way. He simply asked if I was okay, if I was safe, if I needed anything at all. As the night went on, the shame I carried when I walked in slowly began to melt, the same way the snow melted off my shoulders under the restaurant's warmth. We talked for hours. He asked about my mother, and I found myself sharing memories I hadn't spoken about since her funeral, memories of her cooking on Sunday mornings, her laughter filling our small kitchen, her strength even when we had almost nothing. He listened like every word mattered, like my story wasn't something to pity but something to honor. Then he began sharing pieces of his own life, and slowly I realized this man understood struggle in ways I never expected. He told me about growing up with very little, about nights his own family went without heat, about being overlooked and underestimated by people who judged him before they ever knew him. He said success didn't erase those memories, it only gave him the power to never forget where he came from. He told me he built his life not just on ambition, but on the belief that dignity has nothing to do with how much money is in your pocket. I remember laughing for the first time in months that night, a real laugh, not the polite kind I used at work. We talked about music, about the kind of Christmas mornings we used to dream of as children, about small joys like the smell of rain or the sound of old records playing on a lazy afternoon. Somewhere between the tea and dessert, I stopped feeling like the poor woman who arrived late in a borrowed dress. I started feeling like myself again, whoever that was becoming in that very moment. At some point, he reached across the table and gently held my hand, not in a rushed or forward way, but softly, as if asking permission with just that touch. He looked at me for a long moment before he spoke again. "I don't know how to explain this," he said quietly, "but talking to you tonight, I feel like I finally found something I've been searching for years." My eyes filled with tears I couldn't hold back, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being truly seen for the first time in a long time. I had spent so long believing that my circumstances made me invisible to the kind of love that felt safe and real, and here was a man looking at me like I was the only person in the room. Like my struggles had never once lowered my worth in his eyes. Neither of us spoke for a moment after that. The restaurant around us felt distant, the soft candlelight between us the only thing that mattered. He reached up gently and I found myself leaning in too, and in that quiet golden moment we shared a kiss, soft and warm, filled with everything neither of us had been able to say out loud. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It felt like coming home after a long, cold journey, finally allowed to rest. It was only weeks later, after several more dates, walks through parks blanketed in fresh snow, quiet dinners in his home, a beautiful place with large windows overlooking the city lights, warm fireplaces, and a kindness that filled every room despite its size, that I fully understood who he really was. He wasn't just a man with a comfortable life. He was, in the world's eyes, one of the wealthiest men in the city, someone whose name appeared in business articles and headlines I had walked past 100 times without knowing his face. He had never once flaunted it, never once made me feel small in comparison. When I asked him why he chose an ordinary dating app instead of any other way to meet someone, he simply said he was tired of being wanted for his money, and he wanted someone to fall for him before ever knowing the size of his bank account. He didn't try to fix my life with money alone. Instead, he asked what I truly wanted, what I dreamed of before life got hard. I told him about a small idea I once had, opening a modest bakery, something that reminded me of my mother's kitchen. Instead of simply handing me money, he helped me build it properly, teaching me, guiding me, standing beside me as a partner rather than a rescuer. He respected my pride enough to let me build something with my own hands, even while offering his support. That more than anything made me fall for him completely, not because he could give me things, but because he gave me back my sense of self-worth. We spent the following months getting to know each other deeply, visiting quiet countryside towns with rolling green hills and stone cottages. Walking along beaches where the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, sitting together in cozy cabins during winter trips, where snow fell gently outside frosted windows while we drank hot chocolate by the fire. Every place we visited felt like a page out of a storybook I never believed I'd get to live in. Yet here I was, living it, hand in hand with a man who made simple moments feel like miracles. By the following Christmas, exactly 1 year after that snowy night we first met, he proposed to me in the same restaurant where it all began, at the very same table by the window, candles flickering just as they had before. This time I wasn't late. This time I arrived in a beautiful gown he had gifted me, not out of charity but out of love, wanting me to feel as beautiful on the outside as he always told me I was on the inside. When he got down on one knee, tears streamed down my face before he even finished his sentence, and of course I said yes. Our wedding was small, intimate, filled with real laughter rather than extravagant show. We chose a garden venue with blooming white flowers, string lights hanging between old oak trees, and the soft golden glow of a summer evening surrounding us as we exchanged our vows. My best friend stood beside me, the very woman who had once forced me onto that dating app out of stubborn love and hope. My neighbor, the woman who had given me that red dress and those broken shoes that carried me through the snow that Christmas Eve. Sat in the front row with tears of joy in her eyes, knowing her small kindness had played a part in something far greater than either of us imagined. Not long after our wedding, we discovered I was pregnant. I remember sitting together in our home, a beautiful house with wide windows overlooking a quiet garden, sunlight pouring through in soft golden patches across the wooden floors, and holding each other in complete silence, overwhelmed by gratitude for the life we were building together. We decorated a small nursery with warm, gentle colors, and in the evenings we would sit together on our porch, watching the sunset stretch across the sky, dreaming about the family we were about to become. Looking back now, I often think about that Christmas Eve, about how close I came to turning around and walking home instead of pushing that restaurant door open. I think about how ashamed I felt standing outside in the snow, believing that my lateness, my poverty, my broken shoes defined my worth. But I learned that night and every day since that circumstances do not decide who deserves love. Struggle does not make you unworthy of patience, of kindness, of someone willing to wait for you, no matter how imperfect your arrival may be. If there's one thing I want you to carry with you after hearing my story, it's this: never let your hardest days convince you that good things are not meant for you. Somewhere out there, someone may be waiting for you too, patiently, kindly, without judgment, ready to see you exactly as you are, snow-soaked shoes, tired eyes, broken pride, and all. If this story touched your heart tonight, let me know in the comments below. Tell me if you believe love still waits for the right person, even through the coldest storms. Subscribe for more real, heartfelt stories like this one, and share this with someone who needs a little hope today, especially if their own Christmas Eve feels heavy this year. From my heart to yours, I wish you a season full of warmth, patience, and the quiet kind of love that waits, even when you arrive late. Good night and Merry Christmas.